you saw the very best players the entire country has to offer, and you saw it throughout the course of the weekend.
He's growing, he's improving at such a rapid rate. He's going to be a very good player.
This guy's a cross between Sean Marion and Lamar Odom. He's a 6'8" lefty, a high-level athlete, but also got a little bit of point-forward skills in him as he can handle and pass the ball extremely well. At this point, they are simply the standard by which everyone else is judged in prep school basketball. He's considering the likes of Michigan, North Carolina, Kentucky, Kansas.
Welcome back to the Upside Podcast. I'm your host, Adam Finkelstein, and this week's episode, we have a treat for local Rhode Island fans. We have a University of Rhode Island legend, Jimmy Barron Jr., who just finished up a long and decorated professional career, one of the best shooters, obviously, in the history of not just the program, but of New England. So, Jimmy, thanks so much for joining us.
Well, I appreciate it, Adam. Thanks for having me.
So, you just wrapped up the professional career. Tell me what went into that decision. Were you on the fence? Was it COVID related? How did you finally make the decision to end the playing career?
Yeah, on the fence. I mean, I'm getting up there in age a little bit, 34 now. The body does still feel good. I know I can still play, but a lot of different, a lot of moving parts now, obviously with everything going on. And just felt like, this was a good time to make a transition. I had some interest from IMG Academy to come down as the skills coach there. And I just thought, this might be a good time to just make a transition into something new and something that I was doing before and have always loved to do. And I'm just very fortunate and lucky to be in this position I'm in now and try to do the best I can. So
now we're going to talk at length about your playing career, but just can't leave that one unchecked. So are you going to follow in the family footsteps here and get into coaching? Is that the plan?
Who knows, really? My dad was obviously around it for probably over 3 decades. It's someone who's, taught me almost everything I know and someone I confide in. So coaching's always been there, but I really enjoy the player development aspect and really helping kids of all ages, just try to improve their game as best as possible.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned the relationship with your dad. Obviously, you played with your dad, and that's a dynamic that played for your dad, I should say. That's a dynamic I would love to explore. It's kind of been a little bit of a theme recently. The last guest on the podcast was Eric Musselman, the Arkansas head coach. He talked about growing up, his father's son, kind of, living the recruiting battles and stuff like that. What was it like? I mean, playing for your dad, and I know this is something that you've talked about at various times, but can't be easy playing for your father, especially at that level. Everybody, I'm sure you want to do well for him and represent him and help him win, but there are times when the coach and the players aren't always on the same page in the locker room. So, what was that experience like?
Yeah, it was really challenging. I was so caught up in just trying to get better every day that I didn't let, myself mentally kind of get caught up in that. I knew that, I came into school, I wasn't, I know I could shoot the ball, but I wasn't talented, like I wasn't athletic. So I knew I was kind of behind everyone athletic wise, and I needed to work. And that was kind of what even the gap, or at least, got me some playing time on the court, was that I needed to be one of the hardest workers. As far as trying to look at that as like a pressure situation, I was so immersed in the game and just trying to be the best player I could be. I didn't really get caught up, honestly, in just being the coach's son. And I'm here, I'm here because I'm good enough, but I never got caught up in like saying, oh, my dad gave me a spot, and I got to make sure I do A, B, and C as good as possible, or else people will say, well, he's just on the team because of his dad, in a sense. Yeah. So,
and how about when there were tough moments, your dad gets on somebody, which I'm sure happens in every locker room. Your dad gets on one of your teammates, and then, were you ever kind of in the line of fire and any of that from, through no fault of your own?
No, I don't think so. I was really lucky. I had a lot of really good teammates, especially that second wave of recruits. The guy that came in with me, Kahim Seawright, was amazing. And he was kind of like, he was like the muscle of our group, and I was kind of
Yeah.
like the nice guy. So, and we were always on the same page. So it was great to kind of come in with a good group of guys to be able to help that, you know, if they had trust in me, then everyone else, you know, would follow suit. And I just was like, as long as I'm the hardest worker, as long as I'm the first in the gym, the last to leave, there's not much that they can say, you know,
Right.
and I just tried to always, you know, be as humble as possible and, you know, try to learn as much as I could.
Now, you and I didn't overlap too much. I think when you were you know, you were out of prep school and already at Rhode Island by the time I got out of coaching and started to transition into the scouting media side. But there was one, and I don't even think, you know, I know your dad's aware of this. I was in the gym. I don't know if you remember this. There was I think it was at the time, the New Jersey Nets, who held a big NBA tryout. And I think it was in there. And I happened to be in the gym because I was scouting for Marty Blake at the time and had worked at Portsmouth and stuff like that. And I remember your dad being there with you. And, you know, it was only kind of executives and scouts and, you know, me being able to watch it. So I remember your dad, you know, wasn't allowed to go in to this NBA workout. And I remember afterwards he comes out and says, how do you do? How do you do? You know, so just you know, it was very clear to me then that it wasn't just, you know, there's still a very much like a father, the emotional ties of the father-son relationship. And I remember you shot the heck out of the ball that day. Do you remember that workout at all?
I think I remember the gym. It was kind of in like their practice facility.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, their old one. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember there was like a table in line or chairs just around the court.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I do vaguely remember that too. But my dad's always been, my dad was great. Like our relationship as far as basketball, I think developed the right way, like organically. And I know a lot of parents are tough on their kids. My dad was never tough on me early on, which was interesting. Like I went through a phase, like I was into like skateboarding and rollerblading and all this stuff. And I'm sure he was having a heart attack at the time that was happening. But, you know, it was never like he never made that obvious.
Yeah.
Right. Now, a lot of that probably goes into, you look, he's coaching at St. Bonaventure at the time. He's just worried about what's next practice, next game.
Right.
But like there was a game my freshman year of high school in Olean, New York, when it was the second game of the year. We played a team just across the border in Pennsylvania, Bradford, and I had an awful game. I missed every shot, turnovers. I was embarrassed after the game. There's a lot of people there because varsity played after, and I came out of the locker room and I was in tears, and more so for embarrassment because I loved the game so much. And I was just the kid that comes in and 3, 2, 1, just throws a shot up and whatnot. And I didn't want to have that feeling. And I went to my dad right out of the locker room and I go, Dad, listen, I need your help because I don't want to feel this way anymore. I love this game too much and I need you to help me. And I didn't say like push me or anything. I just said I need your help. And from that point forward is when he made a shift. And we went right from Olean High School. We dropped off my mom and my brother at home. We went to the Riley Center at St. Bonaventure. It had to be around 9 o'clock at night. And we stayed until 2 in the morning, maybe later. And he had the lights on in the arena and we just worked out. So we played that team about 2 months later during a Christmas tournament. And I had 8 threes. And that was the first time that I saw like your work translate on the court. Right. And from that point forward, it was like, you know, I want more and more and more. And that was...
Absolutely. Yeah. Was this a JV game? Because I think you said Wow.
Yeah, he wouldn't let me play varsity. He wanted me to play JV at the time. He wanted me to be on the court. I had an opportunity to play varsity as a freshman, but he's like, listen, you know, the coach at the JV team was a great guy. I think he was also a teacher, and I don't know if there was a connection there. I'm not sure. But it was good that I played JV and was able to play every game and, you know, just get better.
Well, and it seems like that had to reinforce the lessons of humility that served you later you said when you got to URI, you want to be the hardest working, most humble guy there. I mean, it seems like that was something that was ingrained upon you at an early age, if you could have played varsity. And I mean, I remember as a high school player, nobody wants to play JV. Everybody wants to be the guy sitting in the stands during the JV game because you're only the varsity player, especially as an underclassman. So I'm sure that was, that lesson in humility was there at an early age. So that's the point, where we establish, okay, now you're really going to fall in love with it. What did everybody raves about your work ethic? But like I said, you and I didn't necessarily overlap as much. So talk to me about your work ethic and the specifics of it, because this is always a lesson that I like to underscore anytime we have someone like yourself on here. Duncan Robinson was on this podcast a few months ago, and I did the same thing to him. Everybody raves about his work ethic, and same thing. He's humble and doesn't really want to talk about the specifics of the long hours, but I really pressed up. So I'm going to do the same to you, because I think it's an important lesson, because there's so many kids who think they work hard, but have no idea what that really entails when you see the guys on TV or the guys professionally who are renowned for their work ethic. What that means so much more than just going out and giving pretty close to max effort a couple times a day. So what did that process look like for you, beginning in Olean and then transitioning into New England and Worcester Academy?
So in Olean, it was, after that game, it was just, okay, in the gym as much as possible, as long as possible. So my dad would, say it was a Saturday, he would drop me off at the Riley Center, had to run a couple errands. I would still be in the Riley Center for 3, 4, 5 hours, get lunch there, give me $10. I get, I remember a quart of chocolate milk with, I think it was chicken fingers at the little cafeteria there. And I'd stay. So now it's 12, I'd stay 1, 2, 3, 4, again, go back, get the same meal, then stay there again. I would be there for like 8, 9, 10 hours. And
this is just you, the ball, and the arena.
Me, the ball, the arena, and then just a commentator in my head, just running through different scenarios. Yeah. Trying to be that kid. So I loved it, and I loved it more after bad days. I couldn't wait to be like, okay, now I get my chance to get better at that, and work on that. When I transitioned to Rhode Island in high school, I met a guy, Rob McClanahan, who was my assistant coach at high school, and he really helped me to piece the other part together, which is, well, you don't need to be in the gym for that long. You need to be in the gym for a certain amount of time, and you need to be efficient. And then when you leave the gym, you need to prepare yourself for the next time you're in the gym, meaning take care of yourself outside of the court.
Right.
And he was immensely beneficial for me from that point forward, even up till now. To me, he's like an older brother and someone I always confide in for everything. And from that point forward, I started to learn how to do other things and just be as efficient as possible, leading up through Worcester Academy, which was a great bridge to take me from, I only had a Division II offer coming out of high school from Assumption. And I knew, getting back to the humility thing, I knew I wasn't good enough. I think the mindset now with kids is it's the other way. They think they're good enough. I knew I wasn't good enough, and I needed that year. And I played against a guy by the name of Aaron Jackson, as you know, and we would always be on the opposite teams, and every day we went at each other. And that really helped me, because you're playing against D1 competition every day, not just in games, but in practice, and really helped me to get better at a faster rate. And then understand, I am getting better. Now here comes the confidence. I'm doing well in games, I'm scoring. And I was really good at saying, that just happened. Okay, I had 30 here. Okay, that's good. Now let's get ready for the next day, because it could go the other way. And I don't know if that's fear. I don't know what you would call that, but it was just always trying to stay, level-headed and just get ready for the next one, because that game is over with. And now we got to move forward. And then just finally, get back to the humility thing. When I went to URI, the best thing that I had going for me was I knew I had a long way to go.
Yeah.
And that was from day one. And again, I'm coming in, I was with those guys since I was a kid, since 2001, 2, 3, and I would rebound for those guys, and I'd give those guys water, and I would, I was the ball boy, I was the manager, whatever. So I walk into that situation like, oh, these are the guys I've always looked up to, revered, and DeWan Robinson, Jamal Wise, all those guys. So I had a really good level of humility coming in, and I think that helped me a lot.
All right, so a couple things there. Now, Aaron Jackson, I know because he was a Connecticut guy. I remember recruiting kids on his Northwest Catholic team, before he went on to Worcester. He ended up in the A10 as well. Was it Duquesne he ended up at?
Duquesne, yeah.
So were you distinguishing yourself at Worcester? When you went to Worcester, did you go with the goal of playing your way to the Atlantic 10, or was it just, let me see if I can take this to the next level? Was it specific that you knew you wanted to get to Rhode Island?
Well, let's just say my dad and I had a verbal agreement together and saying, look, I'm going to invest in this for you. Yeah. You have 8 months and start the watch. There you go. You're on your way. Yeah. And if not for Coach Riley and Coach Sullivan, I mean, they were huge for me every day. I mean, so.
Yeah. Gotcha. And then, all right, so now you're at Rhode Island and you have when you look back at Rhode Island, what are your best memories? What are the stories that you're going to remember till your dying day, the moments that really stand out?
Going into the Ryan Center at night when other people are at, a club or party, whatnot, having the lights off and just being alone, shooting, and lights off, not by my choice. I wasn't able to turn them on. So I would just, at that point in time, the Ryan Center was just built, and I just went in there. And this was even before I went to school there. I just would take my dad's keys and open up the gym and just be alone. And I remember it would take about 10 minutes for the eyes to adjust. And thank God the brightness on the little clock they had in the corner was super bright, and I could see vaguely the rim. And those were awesome moments.
But when you hear people, and this is another thing that I don't think kids understand, they hear people say, fall in love with the process, learn to love the process. That's what they're talking about. Because I asked you what was the best memory, admittedly thinking you're going to talk about a big win or some bear hug with your dad, some culminating moment. And you're talking about the gritty work where no one else is watching as the moment that you enjoyed the most. So I think that's, again, just to kind of illustrate that, if there are kids or players watching, those are the moments that's what people mean when they say fall in love with the process. And for you, that was authentic. Those were the moments that you really, was there any kind of culminating, big 20 win? Because I know your dad won 20 games, several seasons in a row there. Was there any moment of, hey, I helped my dad do this, or anything like that?
He had 2 coaches of the years when I was there during my time, so I always bust his chops about that, jokingly. There was a game my senior year. I want to say it was against St. Bonaventure, and that game was always special too, especially going back to Olean. But we played them at home my senior year, and again, I think this was the game. We were down at half, and then we played well in the second half. I had a really good game in the second half. We came back and won the game. And it was a game we were supposed to win, but we just were playing bad. We were playing poorly to start. After the game, he was like, I'm just really proud of my son, of Jimmy. Yeah. And I remember pausing, wait a second. And that was the first moment where I really was like, okay, it is coming to an end. There's only a couple months left, or maybe at that point, a couple weeks. And he's, starting to enjoy it, and appreciate it. And I was doing the same thing. So it was cool. And it was, our relationship was interesting. When we were there, we looked at it as a job, and we didn't get too caught up in the father-son thing, both of us. And more so because that's what he instilled in me early on. And it was just cool to see us, kind of just appreciate those last couple weeks.
Yeah, that is pretty cool. As you look back on Rhode Island, obviously, there's going to be overlap with your dad's experience there. No coaches at the same place forever. Does that impact any of your memories or the way your connection to the university or anything like that?
Initially, early, as far as when he left?
Just yeah, I mean, just like he's not still the coach there. They've moved on. Does that taint any of your fondness for the experience there at the university, or is that kind of water under the bridge at this point?
Oh, at this point, it's water under the bridge. But I will say I was upset initially, and not so much because of my dad, but it was because my brother was in the middle of it at the time,
Right.
And that's what hurt a little bit because. Look, at that point in time, I was overseas. I was understanding the professional part of the game. And at first, my first team, I was in Turkey. My first game of that season, I sat in the bleachers because the head coach didn't like me and the club was trying to get rid of me. So I understood that, okay, this is a business. Now at the college level, it's not that drastic. Coaches are there for a longer period of time. And I knew that, everyone goes in another direction.
Right.
And it was just tough to see like Billy in the middle of it.
Yeah.
As far as right now, looking back, like I have a great relationship with Thor, the AD there, with the school, with the alumni.
Cool.
And I love that place. I love to go back. I love to call it home. So I wouldn't have changed anything. Like Rhode Island's my home. So
yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Now, Billy is someone that I did overlap with. And I remember, as I was kind of transitioning into the scouting media side, I remember watching him. And, initially, I think that was I don't want to call it a burden, but there was a couple of years there where he was like the expectations of being Jimmy's younger brother, I think were like, were heavy, and almost like, and we see it more nowadays, but the labels put on kids at a really young age of relative to level or status or whatever. And so I do think there was, with him, there was, for lack of a better word, a burden of hey, he's going to be this, he's going to be that. And then there was a point where, and I'm not sure if it happened according the same way, but there was a point where I remember watching him and it clicked for him. I don't know if it was as definitive as one night after a JV game in Ole in New York, but all of a sudden he became obsessive and in a largely good way, at least externally, with his work ethic. And then you saw his game go to that next level. So we've talked about the father-son dynamic. Talk to me about the big brother dynamic. You're overseas, your brother's going through this first the recruiting process and then playing for your dad. How does that all go? How are you able to guide him through that? And were there any differences in the way he approached it versus the way you approached it?
I don't think there were. I don't know if I could say differences because he was actually recruited and I wasn't really recruited. You know? So I had told him early on. I think he was going into his junior or senior year at Henrika, and I was going to my junior senior year at URI, and he matured early. I matured late.
Physically, you're saying.
Physically. So the story is we were playing one-on-one in the Ryan Center, and he put a drive on me and hit me right in the chest, and I was like, whoa. So I had always told him, like towards the end of Henrik, and I'm like, look, you're well ahead of where I was at that age. I'll never admit to him that he could shoot better than me as like a brother to brother thing, but he has everything else that I didn't have. And I told him, I said, just you keep your head down and you keep working. You'll have a lot of opportunities. And so when he started, at Worcester, I mean, he played terrific at Worcester. He did commit to Rhode Island initially, and then Virginia came in and loved him. I think that was Coach Bennett's first recruiting class as well with Joe Harris. And I remember, I can't remember if it was Coach Sullivan or Coach Riley who called me and told me. And I remember calling Billy. I said, "Hey, why don't you just go down there and take a look at the facilities? Just."
It's your fault. This whole the family drama is your fault. Is that what you're owning it now?
No, I will own this. Like I was 100% for him. Look, Virginia, come on,
right?
ESPN, ACC. Go take a look. Like there's a couple more seats there in the arena, and just take a look. So he went down, took a visit, loved it. I think he had a really good connection with Coach Bennett, and decided to go there. And then after that, I think he just felt. I think there was some guilt there. that he wanted to follow in my footsteps. He wanted to play for Dad. My dad wasn't having a good season during that year, and he just felt like he could help. He wanted to help. So that was kind of the decision he made to go back. And then just kind of followed him to Canisius, where he was able to, kind of come into his own and play like he knew he could play.
That was fun to watch. Because being able to watch him from the very beginning of Hendricken to then watching it all click at Canisius, I'm sure even from abroad overseas, that had to have been a proud big brother moment, just to see how dominant he became as a college player.
Absolutely. And I watched every game. I mean, I was in Russia at the time, and there was about an 8-hour time difference. So those were some late nights. I remember Nick Kalaitis used to come over. We used to watch the games together.
Yeah.
4 a.m, we're doing chest pumps because he gets like 35 or hits a game winner.
Right.
some small apartment in Krasnodar. But
the unguardable shot off his back leg with that release point way up here. No separation needed, just drilling it in your face. Yeah.
Yep. Always stepping in left, right, kind of turning in the air, squaring yourself up. So it was awesome. And I just, at that point, and even early on, I was just pumping him up as much as possible. I'd critique him here and there on stuff that I think that he could do. And I was at, a really good level in Europe at the time. Mm-hmm. So I was learning a lot myself from Nick and some of the other point guards I had played with at that point. But as a big brother, I mean, come on, I'm sure he's getting it from Dad as far as the criticism part. So I'm just there to pump him up as much as possible and keep that confidence level high for him.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about your international playing career now. You mentioned you were in Russia, and you and I, to get ready for this email, you and I exchanged some emails, and I said, hey, any good stories or anything I should ask you about? And you sent me like 2 lines of it. My initial response was, holy, like all that stuff happened. So some of the experiences you've had playing internationally have been memorable, to say the least. So first let's start with this. Your international career lasted how many years exactly, and where did it take you in terms of clubs you played for?
Played 11 years.
Yep.
So started in 2009, went to Turkey, a small city called Mersin, Turkey, which is on the southern coast, not too far from the Syrian border. And from there, played just 1 year there. From there, moved to San Sebastian, Spain, which is in the northeast coast of Spain. Played there for 2 years. From there, moved to Krasnodar, Russia for a year. From there, I moved to Virtus Roma, played in Rome for a year. Then went back to Spain, played for a small team called Fuenlabrada just outside of Madrid. Halfway through the season, got a better opportunity to play back in Turkey. For a club called Banvit, which is in this very small seaport village just south of Istanbul over the water in Bandirma. From there, went and met Billy in Belgium. We played together for a year in Spiru Charleroi. And then from Belgium, went to Lithuania for 2 years. Played 6 months in Klaipėda, Lithuania, and then got a better opportunity to play for Rytas Vilnius in Vilnius, Lithuania. And then after that, moved to France for 2 years, from the final 2 years, and played for Chalon Reims, just about an hour to the east of Paris.
All right, so basketball aside, favorite country to live in from those travels?
It's like a toss-up between Spain and Italy.
Really? Yeah. I was going to say Rome's got to be in there, but that's...
Yeah. But I tell you what, family-wise, France, when they were there, was terrific. I mean, we were 45 minutes from Disney Paris. So for the kids, it's tough for myself and my wife, but for the kids, they fell in love with that place. So at what point did you get married and have kids, like relative to that timeline of international travel? So my wife and I, we started living together in my second year in Spain.
Okay. And that's how many years into the career?
3.
Okay.
3. Now we were dating.
Followed you that whole time.
Yeah, we were dating before that, and she made a really difficult decision. Because the long distance thing wasn't going to work for either of us, and she left her career. She had a great job at the University of Rhode Island in admissions, and decided to follow me. And we started my second year in Spain, and then every year since then. She's been with me, and the kids came into the picture when my brother and I played together in Belgium. So not only it was the kids' first year, their uncle was on the floor below them, and so that was really, really cool.
So you've got newborns, and Billy's there as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. That's great.
So
and was your dad still coaching at this point, or had he retired?
That's a great question. No, I think he was over there a lot that year, so he was already finished up.
Because I remember his retirement announcement. Pardon me. There was reference to both you and Billy and his grandkids about how he wanted to see you more. So I guess what I'm trying to get to is, like, were you guys all over there together like that?
He came a lot that year. He was, I think he came twice early on, and then he stayed for a while late as we finished the season.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think as a coach, once Billy left, he had coached me for 4 years, and then Billy for, I think, 2.5.
Right.
It kind of felt like there was something missing for him at that point. He was getting a little bit older, and he's been around the block, so he was like, all right, this is time to move on, type of thing.
Yeah. So all right, I asked you about the best country to live in. Was there? I mean, some of those places, you say them, and I'm like, ooh, like were there places where you might not have felt safe every day? Was that ever a factor?
When Billy and I lived together in Belgium, that year was when there was a terrorist attack in Paris, and I think it was a nightclub shooting. A day or two later, the report came out that the terrorists were from Belgium. So, my wife was, really nervous at the time, and we had newborns. She's like, I want to go home. I want to leave. Right. And I'm like, well, look, they haven't caught any of these guys yet. So it's better that, maybe we just kind of hang it out for a little while and play it safe. I don't know if right now is the best time to travel.
Yeah.
So it was about 3 months later, maybe 4, is those same terrorists bombed the Brussels airport, the same one we flew into. And it hit like a ton of bricks for me, because I'm watching CNN, seeing this. I mean, it happened 8 a.m, and I remember Lauren texting me saying, turn on the news right now. So I turned it on. Literally, when I turned it on, I see the guy that makes my lattes at Starbucks running out in the apron. Same guy. And I'm like, So I told Lauren, I said, all right, let's make our arrangements. Obviously, we couldn't fly out of Belgium, so we drove. It was about 2.5 hours to Paris, Charles de Gaulle, got him on a flight, sent him home. I flew home with them because the kids were minors or under the age of 2. So 2 adults had to accompany them. Flew home, landed in Newark. Her parents and my mom came there, picked them all up, and then I hopped on the same plane, still running, flew right back to Belgium. Had a game that night or that next night, and got them out of there. So that was end of March, and just finished out the rest of the year alone. So
wow.
Yeah.
Tell me the GOAT story.
So 4 games into my first year as a pro in Turkey, we were 0-3, 0-4 at the time, not playing well, and the coach gets us all out in front of the arena and gets us all in a big circle. Now we have our warm-ups on. A couple guys got a good sweat going.
I had no idea this was like a basketball-related story. I just knew there was a GOAT story. So
no, it's very much so related to basketball. Yeah. So get us out in a circle, and our assistant coach, brings a goat into the middle of the circle. Get a big knife out, and just with one, the rest. But
decapitates the goat.
Decapitates the goat. Yeah.
So what is the teaching moment? I'm not trying to mock it. Like, what was the point? What was his point in the moment? Like,
I guess the goat symbolizes, and I don't know if it's the head or the body, symbolizes bad luck.
Oh, so it was like a ritual.
Yes, it's a sacrifice.
Okay.
And they basically, I don't know if there's a prayer I was so emotionally shook at the time that I saw that. My mom was there at the time, and
Did your mom see it?
She was just walking out of the arena, kind of like the tourist that's, what's going on over here type of thing.
Yeah.
And I remember grabbing her by the shoulders, spin her around, go back inside. There's nothing going on out here. So, but yeah,
Did you guys win the next game?
We won the game that day. We won. Yeah. So it worked. So
yeah. All right. And then biggest basketball achievement, is that 2000, like from a team standpoint, is that the championship in 2013, the Euro Cup?
Yeah, that was special. We had a great team. Some Americans that you may know: Nick Kalathis, Derek Brown, Richard Hendricks.
Yeah.
A couple guys that played on the Lithuanian national team, some Russian national team players too. So it was like a EuroLeague team, but in Euro Cup, because the club really made an investment in trying to get to the EuroLeague the following season, and we were able to do that by winning the championship.
And tell me about the atmosphere that goes into like playing, overseas at that level.
Every country is different. Greece, Lithuania, Serbia, especially, are very high pressure, tense environments for basketball. I'm sure there's. What's that? Yeah.
Just ask the GOAT. Yeah.
Yeah. Russia, Spain. Spain's pretty high pressure too, but they're more like controlled.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah. Let's say like Spain, Russia, those type of places are like the NBA atmosphere. And then you get into like, Serbia, Greece, Lithuania, especially the rivalry games, they're more like a college Duke Carolina atmosphere. And that's not even giving it total credit. It's a lot higher up than that.
Because I've seen pictures of like smoke-filled arenas because smoking's more a part of the culture, or maybe it was back then. I mean, is that stuff? Did you live that stuff on like a game-to-game basis, or is that more the exception than the rule?
No, when I was in certain countries, yeah, game by game. We traveled to Turkey from Russia. We had just beat Galatasaray by a bunch of points, 20 points, and we played them the following week in Istanbul. And it was like no holds barred. I mean, we're walking out of the tunnel. We got batteries, we got coins, stuff coming at us. We'll go back in, then we come back out, and now we got bottle rockets coming. One time. And there's just, it's their fans on both sides of the arena.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, oh, who's this one gonna hit, or who's that type of thing.
Right.
But they just try to do the best they could to make it as hostile of an environment as possible. And it's different there. So they sing like their anthems and their songs, even while their own team has the ball.
Yeah.
So it's not like they're just loud for us. They're loud for the entire game, the entirety of the game.
Is that a distraction? I mean, certainly when people are throwing batteries at you, it's a different kind of mental challenge. But overall, just the kind of, like the analogy I'm thinking in my head is tennis, like where you don't make a noise when somebody's playing, and then it gets loud in between points, and players don't necessarily know how to focus if they ever have to play through the noise. Is that, this is getting into the weeds a little bit, but is adjusting to play with that different kind of fanfare, was that a process, or was that pretty instinctive?
No, it was definitely a process. Like, you walk out for warm-ups, and 2 hours before the game, it's packed. And they're yelling at you, they're screaming, they're all sorts of, I'm not even going to get into it, but they're very hostile is not the right word, because not all arenas are tough. I mean, I'm sure you've got your people here and there that make a decision that's not good, but it's a very hostile environment in some places, and it does take some getting used to. What makes it easier is that when the game starts, it's just nonstop, like screaming, yelling, whistling, horns, whatnot. If they did it more in a timely fashion, like they do here in the States, it might be more distracting, like just yelling when we have the ball versus when their home team. Right. But they do it like when both has the ball. So we're like, all right, well, just okay.
Becomes constant.
Yeah.
So what ended up being the final year of your career overlaps with the beginning of the pandemic. And I know there were quite a few different, notable moments for you. But what was, just a broad overview first, like remind me again where you were last year, and what was that like? I know you said your youngest daughter was born at the beginning of the pandemic, and I believe you said you were on a flight from Paris when Gobert tested positive, and then there was take me through those last few months and what that was like for you.
Sure. Yeah, we my wife was home. She and the kids went home just after Thanksgiving, and just to finish up the rest of the pregnancy in the States. We had always made the decision for her to do the pregnancy in the States. That was what was comfortable for her, so it was fine for me. We had scheduled the pregnancy for March 10th. I had a game March 8th in the south of France. So played the game. There was a strike in France the following day. So instead of flying to Charles de Gaulle, I took a 5-hour taxi from my village to the town that I was playing the game in, to Charles de Gaulle, hop on the plane, fly home. And mid-flight, on the flight home, there was a lady that was sick. And
wow.
It was just when things started to pick up.
Yeah.
There was a cruise ship at the time that was floating around in the, so everyone's kind of just cautious. I was one of the few that had a mask on at that moment. I mean, at this time it's March 9th. And so flew home just to be safe. We had the pregnancy was on March 10th. Everything went fine. Scarlett was born. Flew out the next day.
You went back.
So I went back because now Scarlett was born on a Tuesday. I went back Wednesday. We're supposed to play Friday.
Wow.
I'm on the runway at Logan. Obviously, you're not supposed to have your phone on, but at this point, I'm just,
Right. If that's the biggest problem they got. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm seeing, as soon as the plane starts to move, I see Eurohoops.net say all games suspended in LNB for I think till the first week in April. And again, it's March 10th or March 11th at this moment. So we're taking off, and I'm like, now at that point, I'm just connecting in Newark. So I'm still, still have some time.
Yeah.
Land in Newark, reload the page, read the article. The fine print, it says, we're going to play this weekend. Then we're going to do the suspension for the 2 weeks. So we're going to play first, and then we're going to, so yeah, it doesn't make sense, but that was what was decided. So I get on the phone with the team and the GM of the team I was playing for. I said, guys, are we really playing that? Like, does that make sense? Are they, no, we're going to play. And then we're supposed to play the French Cup the following weekend because the federation and the people that run the French Cup, they're on different schedules. They make different decisions.
But just for some context too, at this point, like it's already really bad in Italy, like really bad in Italy.
Yes. Yeah. Italy was about 5 days ahead, or maybe more than that, maybe a week ahead of France. France was like a week to 10 days ahead of the States. So, yeah, I talked to the GM and they're like, yeah, we're playing, we're practicing tonight, we're practicing tomorrow, and then we're playing a home game that Friday night. So I get on the plane.
You go.
Yeah, I go. I mean, it's it's my job and whatnot, and it was easy because my wife was her whole family was there, my family was there, so she was in good hands.
I've never met your wife, but she sounds like a saint.
Yeah, my wife she's the rock for sure. Yeah, she runs the show.
Pandemic, go ahead, you got a game.
Yeah. Yeah. So I board the flight, and 2 or 3 hours in, maybe. I don't remember the exact time, is when Gobert tested positive.
This is Wednesday night. Yep.
This is Wednesday night. President Trump had a press conference scheduled for that night, first one in the Oval Office, and he said no more flights to Europe. Midway over the Atlantic.
To Europe, or from, meaning you're not sure if you can get home?
I don't remember the language. No more flights from Europe. I'm sorry.
So you weren't sure that you could get home?
Exactly. Because there was no detail, like that's just what he said at the time. So I don't have like a strong Wi-Fi midway over the Atlantic to follow the press conference live. Right. I'm just reading like whatever's on Twitter, like checking it. So I'm like, ooh, I'm looking at my phone. So I walk up to the front of the plane and show the main flight attendant. I said, can you like relay this to the pilot? Can you call back to Newark, just make sure, like, what are the details of this? Because it's at that point, it was anything goes. And so about an hour later, they confirmed it, and they said, yeah, this is the last flight. And again, this is an hour after the press conference happened, so there wasn't much to detail to go behind it.
Right.
So people on the plane are like
freaking out.
I'm staying 3 days, 5 days a week, 2 weeks. I'm not, so now they're starting to offer, okay, you could stay on the plane, stay in the same seat for a fraction of the cost. You can go back. And
they would allow you to go back?
Yeah, but the question is what about the 120, 200 people waiting to board the plane?
Right.
So there was so much confusion at the time. People were just trying to make decisions on a whim. And I had told the guys, listen, I got to go back. I'm playing, and I relayed that info to the team, and they're like, no, we're still going to play. So I'm like, okay. So I get my luggage. I get on the train, take the train to my city. We have practice that night, and we're in the meeting watching video, and the GM comes in halfway in the meeting, says, all right, the game for tomorrow has been postponed. Just go home. And I'm upset. Now I'm like, all right, guys, come on. So they're like, well, it's just going to be suspended. We're going to pick back up, April 1st or April 2nd with practice, and then we're going to play a game April 4th. 7 days later, President McCroom comes on and says there's no activities until April 15th. Right. Like no functions, no nothing, no group meetings, stay in your homes. 4 or 5 days later, they made a rule where you had to have a form signed, and you had to of when you left the house, when you got back to the house, where you were going, why you were going there. You had to sign it. You always had to have your identification on you. And there was like checkpoints on the street, like regulating movement, just checking where people are going and if everyone's following the rules. And I was able to get out. No more flights were leaving. This was about 10 days after this now. There's no more flights going back from Charles de Gaulle. So I drove to Brussels, had to get over the border, left the car at a friend's house from Charleroi where I played a couple years before that, and I just went back home. So
is the car still there?
No, they got the car back. Back. They met at the border with someone from the club, and they were able to get the car back.
So you were able to, you didn't have any problems getting back home at that point?
I had to have a paper signed about why I was going home. I had to have proof of being an employee in France, and they had obviously known that anyone that was, because the U.S. government had told all Americans to fly home in Europe, and most people, I think, abided by that. So I had a reason to get across the border, hop on one of the remaining flights left out of Brussels, and fly home. And Brussels airport was like a ghost town. It was literally only Americans that were actually allowed to get on the plane to go home.
So as it turns out, please correct me if I'm wrong, but the last game you ever played was 2 days before your daughter was born.
Yes, that's correct.
That's
in Boulazac, France.
That is pretty. Now, when all this was going on, and this is, I know I've monopolized enough of your time, but did you kind of, at this point, did you know this was it? Or were you thinking to yourself, this isn't the way I wanted it to end, I want one more shot at it? Or did you know, like, this is going to be it?
I still thought I was going to play because I was getting some interest from some teams overseas. And I wanted to finish up better. I wanted my family to be with me. I wanted to have just some closure. It wasn't personal, like I needed to achieve something or prove something. No, I just, look, I got a family now. Just had my third kid. The girls, my oldest twins, they're old enough to understand that daddy plays basketball. They run around the court after. Just to do it, I don't know, have a more sense of, like I said, closure with the family together.
No, it makes sense. I mean, that's a chaotic ending, to say the least. So all right, so last question, and I know you kind of alluded to this earlier, but what comes next? So I'm the new skills coach at IMG Academy down here in Bradenton, Florida. Was able to get that opportunity, and it was kind of like all right, well, do I get off the train and start the next portion of what I'm going to do next? It's really an unbelievable school, and I've been there. It's an incredible, unlike anything else in the country from an academy standpoint.
Yeah, it really is. Brian Nash, who runs the basketball program down here, I mean, has done an amazing job navigating through the pandemic. And, it's kind of like its own little bubble right now as far as how they're operating. And it's really cool to see that, everything is still able to go relatively smoothly with all the precautions that they're putting in with making sure everything's cleaned and having kids in certain pods and just being able to try and carry on as much as possible, given the circumstances. So it's definitely credit to the school and everyone involved. So it's cool.
Do you have NBA aspirations for player development? Is college coaching intriguing? Like, any idea? Or are you just going to kind of ride the wave and see where it takes you?
No, I'll ride the wave right now. Just try to be in the moment, not look too far ahead. I think right now the biggest thing is just learn as much as possible. Luckily, you know, at this place, there's a lot of coaches with different backgrounds, and just asking a lot more questions now, and just trying to be, you know, just listen to everything and take in as much as I can. I'll be mostly focusing on shooting and shooting development here, so it's something that's kind of right up my alley, and really looking forward to the opportunity.
Very cool. Very cool. Yep. Well, Jimmy, we've monopolized enough of your time. Thanks so much for taking the time to talk with us. I know that Rhode Island fans are going to be thrilled to be able to hear your story and hear all the, not just the family stuff, but all the excitement that went into your professional career abroad. So we appreciate it. Congratulations on the new daughter and the start of a new career here.
No, I appreciate it, Adam, and I appreciate you having me on. So it was a lot of fun.
All right, absolutely. That is Jimmy Barron Jr. Until next time, I'm your host, Adam Finkelstein. Thanks very much for listening to the Upside Podcast.